4 years have passed since the mortal races banded together and stood united against the might of the Burning Legion. Though Azeroth was saved, the tenuous pact between the Horde and the Alliance has all but evaporated. The drums of war thunder once again.
Hey guys, how's it going? So today is going to be a bit of a different stream for us. This is actually the first time we're going to be talking about classic WoW or vanilla WoW in general on our channel. Lhok and I have both really played WoW ever since vanilla. We did play it back in the day. And so we are really passionate about the fact that Classic WoW has finally been announced, and we wanted to talk about it on our channel a bit. So for the first stream, we decided we're basically going to be talking about the different classes and races that you could pick when you start the game. And we're going to be going over the pros and cons and trying to decide which classes suit which races best in a PvE and PvE settings. So I've got this doc right here you can see up on the screen. Basically what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be highlighting over PvE or PvP in either green for if it's the best pick we think, yellow if it's a decent pick but you know, like it's not optimal I suppose according to us, and then orange is going to be the worst pick, so the one that we're not really too fond of. But keep in mind, this is basically just our opinions, and we aren't like huge classic server players at all. We haven't done these raids in a long time. We haven't, you know, played the classic version of the game in like 10 years or whatever, right? So this is kind of a lot is going to be based off of our memory and the experiences that we had back in actual vanilla, rather than basing it off of maybe the current meta of private servers. It's going to be, you know, just our own opinions. So we thought it might be a different look at, you know, races and classes. It might be something that hasn't really been touched on much before, maybe. I'm not sure. It seems like most videos I see are specific to like nostalgious like Blizzard realms, or private realms, I mean. So, I don't know, this might be a bit different of a take on it. If you guys, of course, have differing opinions from us, just let us know in the comments. We'd love to, see everyone else's opinions. But basically, at the end of the discussion, we're hoping that you guys can basically make up your own minds about which classes you want to go with. Because ultimately, it comes a lot down to your own play style and your own preferences. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering, are we going to start with PvE or PvP first?
How about, well, you know a lot more about PvP, and I feel like I'm more PvE, so maybe we should just do, go one class at a time and go down all the races, and we should do PvE and then PvP for each race. Does that make sense?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, cool. So, did you want to, before we start, did you want to kind of talk a bit about our experiences with Classic? Did you want to go first?
Yeah. Back in the day, I actually rolled a Night Elf first, a Night Elf Hunter by Jazz on Spinebreaker. Spinebreaker. Back when Oceanic Realms were not a thing, and we had massive lag, and no one from an Oceanic player would ever want to play a rogue or a melee class. But I digress. I've also played extensively Horde, rolled a Resto Druid, Tauren, obviously. So there's that. Like you said before, I'm mostly in, or was mostly into PvP. So there is that as well. Because, well, back in the day, most people just played what they felt was a good class race combination. They played what they felt like was that they would enjoy playing. So with the PvE sort of min-maxing stuff, there was min-max players, but they were the minority when it came to that, until new realms sort of started popping up everywhere, and then you could roll on a new server with the ideas of min-maxing in the back of your mind.
Yeah, I did play a bit of PvP, but it was completely casual. I was never into PvP for the rating or into it to try and get gear. I don't even think I got any of my PvP set back when I actually played. I did start vanilla, I think it was around August or September 2005. So I feel like that was basically right after the Blackwing Lair patch. Everyone had kind of already finished Blackwing Lair. I have a feeling that was early summer. And so I actually started out just doing not class trials, but vanilla WoW trials, because I wasn't entirely sure if I wanted to pay a subscription fee for a game. That I'd never done that before. So I kind of started for the first few months just playing the trial version of the game. When I eventually did, decide to have my own account and subscribe, it was probably around December, end of December, so that was kind of right before the Gates of Anchorage. So by the time I got level 60, it was during the time when Silithus, the new quests in Silithus were still new thing, and Anchorage was the current content. So that's kind of when I got to 60. And I never really experienced the super difficult, start of vanilla, I guess you could say. By the time I had gotten into it, a lot of content was pretty much on farm. I never had to struggle through 5-mans or anything like that. And then, of course, when 1.12 Talents came out, which a lot of people who play private servers are used to being baseline. I obviously played before that was a thing, and I remember thinking the 1.12 Talons really changed the game. That by that point, even more of the content was on farm. People could bring... I'm not saying they do it now, but I remember back in the day being in raids, pug raids, for Anchorage. They didn't get very far, but that had bear tanks. Of course, I wasn't in a super raiding guild or anything. I would just kind of join pugs and experience the content. I had done, Molten Core, AQ20, AQ40. Never been into Onyxia because I never did the attunement, and I never did Blackwing Layer. I remember not understanding how you could even get into Blackwing Layer, because like there's probably an attunement, but like you click the orb and like nothing would happen for me, and I just never pursued that further. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to kind of talk about our perspectives, considering it was before the 1.12 talents, and then when Classic does come out, we still don't entirely know for sure if they're going to go with the 1.12 talents off the bat, or if they're going to have more of a progression on the talents. So I don't know, maybe it'll be an interesting perspective.
Yeah, 1.12 broke the game for me, just saying.
Me too.
I didn't like it after that.
Yeah, me too. But I wouldn't be surprised if they do go with 1.12 for Classic. I feel like it's pretty likely, but you never know. So it might be, you know, cool to think about. Like if you do all your plans, right? Let's say you're super hardcore and you're planning out your character right now, and you're trying to decide, because I am, right? Like what you want to play. If you base that all off of 1.12 and then it's not, that would like throw a lot of people for a loop.
I'm looking at playing a hunter, so they were pretty crazy. So long as you didn't go survival right at the start, you're right.
Okay, so let's get into it. So to start off, we've got priests. So we'll kind of go down the list, talk about all the priests. So to start off, we've got human priests. So they've got, you know, perception, diplomacy, human spirit, mason, sword spec. Hopefully you guys can see that on the side. We're not going to kind of explain what each racial does. Hopefully, like if you're probably watching this video and trying to like be optimal, you probably kind of know what they do. So for PvE, as far as I'm concerned, human priests are viable. You're not going to be like shunned if you're a human priest, because they do get a spirit bonus, which is like not bad. It's just not fear ward, right? So from what I hear in the current meta on private servers, from what I hear, a lot of, you know, really popular or really successful or really more hardcore guilds will really favor dwarf priests because of fear ward, of course. It just makes fights like Onyxia like, you know, super easy. So I feel like if you like the aesthetics of a human and you want the easy mode for diplomacy, then go human, especially if you're not going to be doing like super hardcore, you know, end content, but you might end up not being selected if there's a dwarf available who might take your spot, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's also the added bonus because of human spirit giving a spirit bonus. In healing slot, like I did Molten Core, Blackwing Lair, AQ as a Resto Druid. With the increased bonus to spirit, it means that your druids are not necessarily going to have to sit there and innovate the priests as much as what would a horde guild have to do. And and it's a bonus if you run mana tap talismans from Diamol, if that's out when that goes down. But so there's that edge as well, being a human priest.
And if you're going to be doing PvE, if you want to completely be, you know, super min-maxy, super optimal, I still say for PvE, dwarf is better because of fear ward, but diplomacy is like really OP. Like, that might sound kind of casual, but you know, everybody has their different play styles, and to have an extra, I think it's 10% additional reputation. If you're the kind of person who wants to go grind out all the reputations, that might mean a lot of hours for you, and you might not have that many hours. There's, you know, a couple of reasons, but I don't know, call me a casual, but I really like diplomacy. I would still pick dwarf if I was going priest, but at least for the other classes, I think the diplomacy is pretty strong for PvE.
Yeah, it's definitely well, vanilla reps were all grindy. Like there's no getting around it. You had to sit out in the field for days, pick up like I don't know, like 50 million bear asses, and hand them into the rep collection guy and whatnot. But that diplomacy buff, the humans will get the rep-related gear much, much faster than anyone else. So they should technically be better geared, and that should make it easier for progression.
Especially if your priest isn't going to be your main. Like, let's say that you want to take your priest and do content, but it might be your second character, then diplomacy might be even more beneficial to you because you might not have the time to put into that to get all the reps again and whatnot. Whereas, you know, if there was a dwarf who was taking your spot, since it's not your main, it might not be as much of an issue if that's kind of like a side character. So I think human's still a pretty strong choice. I think I would want to put it for yellow for the middle section. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I'll fill that in here, and the next thing we have to talk about is PvP for human priests. So that's when we get into perception. We didn't really mention perception with PvE because, like, I don't think it really helps whatsoever with PvE.
No.
Does it? Okay.
No. But it's definitely perception is the go-to pretty much for the Alliance. There's lots of rogues in vanilla. There will be lots of rogues in vanilla, and it's just the anti-rogue racial. You pop that, and you can see a rogue from miles away. So if you're going to go into a PvP situation, you want to play a priest, I definitely would be rolling a human.
Yeah, perception is really good. Now, one point that I wanted to make was, it is kind of the gold standard for PvP on the Alliance to be a human, because perception's really good. In certain classes, which we're going to explain later, like they might already get kind of a bit of a bonus to their stealth seeing ability, so it might not be as much of an issue, but priests really don't have anything in their toolkit to see in stealth. They're going to be relying on like hunters putting their flares down or something, right? So for a priest, it is really nice to have perception. The question that I'm personally asking, though, something you have to consider, is you're pretty squishy. Like, you're a total glass cannon if you're a priest in PvP. You're going to be the first one who's targeted if, like, you get stun locked or stun locked. So you're not going to be able to really, like, push away, even if you saw the rogue. Like, what do you think? Do you think it's, like, as valuable to a priest as other classes? I feel like you can't, you're screwed anyway. If there's some, whether you know the guy's there or not, he's there and you're screwed.
Yeah, it is. It's still very, very valuable. I mean, if you're gonna flush one of the big sort of nasty or scary parts of a rogue is them getting the jump on you, because they need it for their stun locks. They need it for their combo points. Like they need to get in there, get behind you, and actually like ambush you, and all that sort of stuff. So if you can see them and you can hit them, that's going to like stop a lot of front load damage coming out onto you. And even if you are squishy, like they'll have to blow one of their cooldowns if they want to actually like vanish, for example. If they want to actually get the jump on you, and most rogues will just vanish and just disappear because they couldn't be bothered because the opener was blown. They're not going to bother.
Right, and that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, I wasn't big on PvP back then, but I would imagine if a priest saw someone with their perception, they thought there was a rogue, and they turn on their perception, they see them, would you, if you were that priest, would you go and, like, try and Holy Nova them out of stealth to, like, break their opener? Like, is that...
Absolutely.
Right. So, in those situations, I can see how that can make a difference. So, you know, human is still really good for PvP. Of course, stone form is good too, but I don't know. What do you think is better? Do you think the human priest? Yeah, human priest would be the best pick, right, for PvP?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean,
out of the alliance races, definitely.
And again, it does matter if you're specifically trying to grind out honor and you're only doing AV, let's say, right? If you're only doing AV, you're staying in a group, you're trying to be the raid healer priest type, you may not find as much use out of perception because there's going to be a bunch of other humans like there's less chance a rogue's going to be getting the jump on you and you're going to be the one to break them out. If that's kind of the playstyle you're looking for with this, you know, picking your class for PvP, then maybe I would suggest to go dwarf. But like, I think overall priest is better.
Yeah, human priest is a very decent pick, if not the best.
Alright, there we go. So let's move on to the dwarf priest. So for PvE, we kind of mentioned Fear Ward OP. Fear Ward, like, in certain clubs of people, let's say, I don't want to say like private server community as a whole, because I would be, you know, I don't have first-hand experience with that, but from what I hear, like, there's some people who are like, if you're not a dwarf, I don't want you. I have a really hard time thinking that's going to be the norm in most content in actual Classic, because it's going to be, like, the dwarf priests are going to be in such high demand. So unless you're, like, really at the, you know, pushing, like, the most current content, I don't think it's really going to be that big of a deal. You probably want priests so bad that you'd probably still pick a human priest because they're fine. Night elves might get a little shafted, but like, I don't know. I'm gonna say dwarf priest simply for Fear Ward is the best for PvE. Find treasure and frost resistance and gun spec really don't matter. Like frost resistance, sure, in Nax that'll help you a bit, but I don't think that really makes or breaks anything. I doubt that's going, like, from my recollection, I don't think that gives priests the ability to, because they're neglecting that extra 5 frost resistance, I don't think that gives them the ability to, like, wear a new best in slot item or like some significant jump, to my knowledge.
I wouldn't know. I didn't play a dwarf priest, but if I did, I'd play a female one, because those are rare unicorns in the World of Warcraft universe, especially back in vanilla with their models.
For some reason, I have this really strong memory of, you know, of course, everyone has heard this in Ironforge or Orgrimmar for you. I played Alliance, right? Alliance. But I would see, you know, people in their tier sets sitting on their mounts, sitting on the bridge, near the mailbox, whatever, in the auction house. And whenever I saw a dwarf priest in their set, I was like so in awe, because they were like rare unicorns, right? Like, I think there was like one I remember seeing, like, ever on my server who was like in their full tier set, a dwarf priest. And I remember being like, wow, that, like, for some reason that struck me as like way cooler than anything else I could see, because it was like the only one who wasn't in like mixed match gear, you know.
But were they female?
Yeah, the only
okay,
female. I mean, there were plenty of dwarf priests. Yeah, no, there was one dwarf priest who had a full tier set. I can picture it, but I don't remember what set, but.
Okay, so for PvP, a dwarf priest is a decent pick, because Stoneform, again, this is going to come back to rogues. Rogues were one of the big bads in PvP. The other big bad being the warriors. Like, Stoneform's not going to really do too much, but it certainly reduced your movement speed. I think it did bleeds or it did poisons. I can't really remember.
Yeah, poisons.
Yeah,
I don't remember if it does bleeds, but definitely poisons.
Yeah, so it's an anti-rogue racial, much as perception is. Unfortunately, you actually had to be afflicted with the poisons first to turn it on to get rid of them. So it's not as effective as, say, perception with the ability to actually stop the initial onslaught against you by a rogue. It's still very good, but it's not as good as perception.
Okay, so priests usually cannot cure poisons, right? That's only druids and shamans?
Correct.
Okay, so it really gives you added functionality. However, again, like, I'm not the PvPer here, but I would assume that if you got attacked by a rogue, would you really, like, using Stoneform to take the poison off, like, would that really make the difference between you surviving that attack?
Possibly. I mean, it does reduce your movement speed as well when it's activated. So, I mean, it's sort of a trade-off. You remove the poisons. So it reduces, like, if they've got crippling poison on, it's not going to do anything because your movement speed is reduced anyway. But if they've got like deadly poison on or something like that, it could actually like help out. I mean, you're a priest anyway, so you can heal yourself. Well, you should be able to heal yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, most damaging poisons, you'd think if you're getting your casts off, you'd be able to heal through them. If you're not getting your casts off and you can't heal, period, you probably aren't going to survive whether you're poisoned or not, was my thinking. But then again, I don't know if any rogues roll that casting speed reduction poison. Like, is that even, like, regarded in PvP at all?
Yes and no. I mean, I saw more of it in Arena when you could see who you were up against, but Arena's not in vanilla, so that's okay. But yeah, mostly it was crippling and deadly from what I remember.
Yeah, so I could, if someone put the casting speed reduction poison on you, I could see it being like, oh yay, I can remove it. But if you've got a rogue like trying to kill you and you get a dot type poison, I feel like you'd be able to heal through that if you were on like the human, right? No?
Yes and no. Depends on how good of a priest you are. Because I mean, as like Stoneform can be like comboed with things like Psychic Scream. So you could fear the rogue, Stoneform, heal through that type of thing. But without, you'd have to live through, and this is the reason why Perception is better than Stoneform, in my opinion. You have to live through that initial burst of the rogue. Stoneform's not going to help you with that. I mean, you could trinket it Stoneform and then try, but a rogue is going to have enough in their toolkit to lock you down. So if you can prevent it from happening, that's better.
I'll agree that Perception's better than Stoneform. The human spirit thing, I feel like, makes less of a difference in PvP than in PvE. Would you say so? Because do you die more often in PvP? That's my thought process.
So if I was gonna do a dwarf priest, it's a decent pick for PvP, but it's not the best. That's my opinion. You can debate me on it.
No, I'm not. I think that humans are a little bit better too, but I think I don't know, they're pretty close. Like, I don't think it really makes a big difference for priest. Because frost resistance, doesn't that also make it so that, like, frost mages will not be able to, like, freeze you in place as much? And, like, you could resist their, like, frost bolts if you're lucky, maybe.
Yeah, that was an added bonus.
But yeah, I'm kind of thinking that Perception, just like you said, it completely screws the rogue's opener, and that's like very amazing. Whereas, and you can use that to defend somebody else, or you might see a rogue who's not even going for you, who's going for somebody else, and you can preemptively protect them. So I feel like Perception's definitely best. Frost resistance, it helps, but exactly, like if a mage is attacking you, Stoneform it helps, but if a rogue's already attacking you, I feel like there's less chance that it's going to really save you at the end of the day. So I agree. I think human, we've already got it, best for priest, and then dwarf, I'm going to put it yellow for, like, decent pick.
Oh no. Next is Night Elf. Poor Night Elf priest. We actually haven't spoke about or mentioned that each like I know we've mentioned Fear Ward and whatnot and the human spirit and stuff, but I can't remember what the level priest spells that they got, or is that them? Because I thought they were racials.
So back in vanilla, the priest spells worked a bit differently than they do now. Just like you're saying, yeah, there was like some level ones, and then there was just a general, like a blanket one. With night elves, then they had the like star shards. And then the other one you're asking about, I don't even remember what it was, but like, it wasn't, can you remember any of them? Because I feel like those ones are just like not even in the main toolkit, except maybe the dwarf one.
Yeah, I can't really. I mean, the only ones I remember are Devouring Plague for the Undead and Star Shards because it was absolutely useless from the Night Elves. Like, you didn't roll a Night Elf Priest unless you liked Night Elves and wanted to play a Priest because they were just bad.
Yeah, you kind of said it all. Like, that's, you know, definitely worst pick for me for PvE and PvP, I would say, because honestly, the racials just give absolutely no added benefit to a priest whatsoever. Dodge means nothing. Nature resistance, like in PvP, most classes don't use nature spells. Like, you've basically got only druid. Do shamans have some nature spells? Yeah, they do, right?
Yeah, a little. Mm.
So if you're, you know, a night elf, you're gonna be facing off against shamans too. So, like, but it's the same as what we said about the frost resistance for the dwarves. Like, at the end of the day, if you're getting attacked, who cares if you have a chance to like resist one spell? You're like so squishy.
The dodge is handy against rogues, but it's not gonna it's not gonna be enough to save you unless you like Psychic Scream and Praise Star Shards will finish them off.
It's not even a competition like compared to the other racials. Like, Shadow Meld is nothing like it is in the current game now. It's pretty much completely useless unless you're comboing it with another ability that also is kind of like a escape button.
And even then, because you can't move, it's like, I'm in the shadows, but I'm still where you last saw me.
So, like, the only benefit I can think of at all if you're a Night Elf Priest is that, if you're, like, guarding a point in PvP, you can be, like, standing in a bush, shadow melded or something, but, doesn't really matter. It's not even a good stealth. Like, I'm pretty sure shadow meld isn't even as strong as like a rogue stealth. Like, if you stand next to somebody who's shadow melded, you can see them, right? Like pretty close.
Absolutely.
So it's like, it's not even worth talking about in my opinion. I'm gonna put them worst pick for both.
Yes, I would too. It's probably just worse because Star Shards, in my opinion.
Well,
Whoever thought of that was the worst.
Fear Ward is amazing for PvE. Perception is amazing for PvP. What did Night Elves get? Like, and Star Shards, is that arcane damage or is it holy damage? I feel like I want to say
Arcane.
Yeah, I thought it was arcane. So, because you know, there are some people out there who, you know, they've got their special snowflake specs. I've seen it done. You know, people who want to be totally out of the norm and they want to see, you know, get every single consumable in the game, no life, get, you know, put all their money into this weird spec, and let's say be like a DPS holy priest or something. Like, some people there's probably one person out there who wants to do that. But even then, you don't want to have Star Shards because it's freaking arcane damage.
Maybe that's why Blizz gave them the Wisp Spirit, because they die a lot, so they need to run back faster.
That's a burn. Okay. Yeah, I gotta be honest. I kind of feel like Blizzard might have considered this a trade-off for them being, like, pretty. Like, I honestly might have think that they thought, because in Warcraft 3, Night Elves were so well received, right? Because their environment, elves are so popular, just, there is a chance that they knew people would play Night Elves even if they sucked. And they were right.
Absolutely, they were right. The other thing is they do get nature resistance because they are a druidic race. So at least that's something.
And again, there may be some added benefit over in AQ, where maybe you don't have to wear like this extra piece of gear for your 5 nature resistance, and maybe you can like wear this better piece of gear but it doesn't make up at all in this situation for, you know, not having Fear Ward, basically, or the additional spirit from Human Spirit. Like, even this extra gear piece that I don't even know whether it exists or not, if that was the case, I don't think it would give you more spirit than, like, Human Spirit, so it's just bad.
Yep.
Alright, so, I guess we can move on to the Horde Priests. So,
yeah, the Horde Priests. Basically, if you can be it, you should be it. If you can be an undead and be that class, then you should probably be that class and be undead. That's why back in vanilla, the Horde had basically 60% of its races being made up by undead. Will of the Forsaken is just that strong.
yep. And Cannibalize isn't as helpful on a priest because you can heal, you would think, but when you're leveling, like, you know, you're probably going to be leveling in Shadow, but who knows, maybe you're not leveling in Shadow for whatever reason. In any case, mana is your resource to basically kill mobs. And even in, you know, if your main is a priest and you don't have other classes, you have to farm on your priest, you have to grind rep on your priest. Like, you're going to be using your mana in order to speed up the task at hand. So being able to cannibalize instead of healing yourself is actually still like a handy thing.
Also, I know the undeads got Devouring Plague, which was another damage over time spell, which was really strong. From both a PvE and a PvP perspective.
What did Devouring Plague do? Do you remember? I forget. Was it a dot?
Yeah, it was a damage over time spell. It was the strongest priest, like racial spell that a priest could have. And I know that because there was much crying about it on the forums.
Fair enough. Sorry, that was my dog. I don't know if you caught that, but... Okay, so I agree. Like, Will of the Forsaken is just really good, both for PvE and PvP. Shadow Resistance is also pretty good, I feel.
For PvP, basically, because warlocks were quite strong, undeads were basically made for destroying warlocks. The Shadow Resist definitely helps. Will of the Forsaken, if you get feared, you can just pop that, and then you've got a trinket that you can also use. So, like, it just made them really, really strong.
Yeah, because it's not uncommon to just like try and chain fear priests, especially before diminishing returns on fear, and especially before like when fear was longer than 8 seconds or whatever, however it worked. So I feel like shadow resistance would be good because you're probably like, it's probably pretty common for a priest in PvP to be like dotted up by warlocks a lot, just like because I played a warlock, and you know, that seems like the kind of thing you would just like try and annoy the priest by dotting them, or any healer really, because then they have to both focus on who they're healing but focus on themselves too.
Absolutely.
And we only have 2 choices actually for priest on the horde side, so I guess we're not going to even have a best, a decent, and a worst. We're really just going to have a best and a worst. So ultimately it comes down to, like, is it better for Will of the Forsaken or is it better as a troll? You've probably all heard about how bad the troll racials are in general. There are, as you'll see, there are some classes that benefit from the troll racials, but like as a blanket, it's probably the least beneficial overall. And Will of the Forsaken is like one of the best things overall, both for PvE and PvP. So I gotta say Undead for sure for best pick.
Absolutely. The troll racials were laughingly bad. I don't think I really saw too many troll priests when I was like going through.
Okay, so because there was only like really 2 choices, I've already gone ahead and put the troll as the worst pick. But let's talk about the troll for a bit. So berserking, I feel like that doesn't really do much for a priest unless, like, okay, so basically it increases your auto attacking speed. I don't know for sure if it applies to wands, but I assume it does. And you're spending a lot of the time in the raid when you're like and between, you know, healing, you're casting your wand. But that amount of damage is so trivial that having extra wand cast like means absolutely nothing, right?
Pretty much. The the troll has nothing to protect themselves for this. I'm going back into PvP, but the troll really just hasn't got anything to protect themselves against rogues, warriors, nothing. Like they're just that squishy guy in the back that will just get face melted by anyone who's semi decent.
Yeah, and as a priest in your toolkit, you really don't need to worry about that regeneration thing either. Like that's not really that helpful. Beast slaying, like you're not. I guess
Beasts will fear you.
Like even if you're a shadow priest, like it doesn't matter that you can do some extra damage to beasts. Like it doesn't. And throwing in bow completely unapplicable.
I mean, it might help farming a little bit, maybe, slightly.
For
Probably not at all.
For the beast one, you mean?
Yeah.
For like frost saber stuff or something. I'm like trying to think like what beasts do you farm?
Yeah, like I was thinking maybe like the basilisks on the salt flats for like money and stuff like that. I know that was a big farming ground.
When you're doing your quests in Stranglethorn Vale, pick up troll just for that. I'm just kidding.
It'll get you out of there faster. Nesingwary would be proud.
Yeah, so yeah, troll's pretty bad for a priest. So that's said and done. So next class we've got there is rogues. So starting off with the human rogue, same thing really that we said for the priest. You know, in PvE, diplomacy is nice. It's nice across the board for everybody. Spirit isn't going to help you at all, so useless for rogues. Mason sword specialization actually can be quite good for rogues, and perception is like just in general OP. Like that's the difference between a rogue who is or a rogue who's a human facing off against a rogue of any other class. Like the fact that you can kind of see them. Now, can you cast perception from stealth, or does it break stealth?
I believe you could cast perception from stealth.
I think you could too.
And it wouldn't break it, yeah.
So I would say that human for PvE is I want to say they're the best rogue.
Yeah, a human rogue is if you're just thinking for both, it's the best at least for PvP.
Okay, I think it is for PvE too. For PvP, I wasn't sure because I wasn't sure if Escape Artist on the gnome was like a worthy adversary, but
it's decent because it means you can get out of a stun lock and you've also got your backup trinket. But like I said with the perception with the priest, if you can get the rogue, if you can find the rogue and get the rogue in stealth and get the jump on the rogue, you've got all that front load damage coming out. And on a rogue on rogue fight, the one with perception should always win.
Right, I completely agree with that. And then for PvE, it's just obvious. Like Mason sword specialization for a rogue is incredibly amazing. Yeah, definitely best pick, I would say, for both then. That was easy. Humans OP. Okay, so then we got the dwarf rogue.
They're not too bad from what I can see. Like stone form again is pretty decent. Getting rid of like bleeds. I should stop saying bleeds, but poisons at the very least. So it's good against another a rogue. Find treasure is pretty good because rogues have pick lock, so you can like get some extra income via that. Frost resistance and gun specialization. Back in vanilla, rogues could actually use guns for some reason. Like they can, I think they can still use ranged weapons, which is strange. But so I guess that might be handy.
Thank you for the follow, Wookie. And thank you for coming to the stream. Yeah, gun specialization is not useful at all for anybody except hunters, and even with hunters, it's questionably useful because, like, I don't want to get into a long ordeal about it, but basically, gun specialization gives you an extra weapon skill in guns, and what a weapon skill does is it makes it less likely for your target that you're attacking to dodge your attack, to parry your attack, to block your attack, or to have glancing blow. That's basically what weapon skill does. But there's no glancing blows on ranged weapons. So already the gun specialization, the ranged weapon skill does less than the others. And then in PvE at least, if you're a rogue and somehow for some reason you were trying to shoot something, if they wouldn't be blocking or parrying because you're not shooting them to DPS. If you were shooting them, it would be to pull them. So like, if they're not gonna block or parry your initial like shot to pull something. And if you missed, they would just continue standing there and nothing would happen, and then you'd shoot them again and your pull would be fine. So it's completely unimpactful in PvE for rogue. I don't see why a rogue would even use a ranged weapon in PvP. Like, is there any reason? Like, do they do that?
No. A throwing knife they would possibly, but not a gun or a bow. It's just an additional stat stick at that point.
Yeah, and so the weapon skill on a gun, completely useless. So yeah, I can see the argument for find treasure. Stone form is good. Frost resistance helps you a little bit against mages. So I would say that they're a decent pick for PvE and PvP.
They're probably the worst pick, I would say, for PvP, going up against Night Elf and Gnomes. If I had to make a worse pick.
You're right, because I forgot that find treasure is completely used. Like, that doesn't count in PvP. Like, the only reason I was saying decent for PvE is honestly just off of the find treasure thing. So if you're going for raids, I would say dwarf is the worst pick. But I'm actually thinking gnome is probably the worst pick for PvE because escape artist is like not really gonna help you much, I feel, as a rogue in PvE, like over find treasure, frost resistance, stone form. So I think I'm gonna say decent for PvE, but it's like a close thing, so feel free to debate me on that, you guys, if you don't.
No, I think it's a decent pick for PvE, but it's probably like worst pick for PvP, a dwarf rogue.
No, I agree with that. Okay, so then we got the Night Elf.
These guys are not too bad for rogues for PvP. They've got Shadow Meld, which actually ups their stealth, their ability to be detected while stealthing. So that is quite good. I mean, you could debate that it's a bit meh, considering the only person who, the only race that can really like use perception is a human, but it still works quite well against other rogues in the horde and stuff like that. So you've got that. You've got quickness. What was that? I think that was like the dodge.
Yeah, it's extra dodge, and Night Elves also have the highest agility stat.
Yeah, so that in itself is also good because rogues have high agility, so their dodging is quite good unless you're going up against a warrior, because then you'll just get overpowered for days. Um, but all in all, I think the Night Elf would be a decent pick for PvP if you're going to play a rogue.
For PvE, I think it's pretty worthless. Like, if you're going up against mobs, the basic stealth ability should be all you need. You're really not going to be doing anything that a regular, like another rogue, can't do without Shadow Meld, I feel. I don't think that's going to help you at all. Wisp Spirit obviously doesn't help you at all. Dodge in PvE, I guess it helps you when you're leveling, when you're farming, when things are actually on you, if you're not grouped up with somebody. But in dungeons or in raids when there's a tank, you're not going to be needing that, honestly. You already have evasion, like you already have vanish, you already have blind, and so many like gouge, cheap shot. You have so many oops buttons that I feel like the ability to dodge isn't like going to save you at the end of the day, even if you're farming or if you're leveling. Like, I don't think it's worth picking a rogue for that for PvE. Sorry, a night elf for that for PvE. The nature resistance is nice. Again, for all I know, maybe this gives you a big boost in AQ because you need the 5 less nature resistance. Maybe you can equip some extra ring that like makes you, like, gives you a bunch of agility. Like, I don't know, so that could be something to look into. But otherwise, I can't see them being like a big deal for PvE either. Just for PvP.
Yep, so decent pick for PvP, probably worst pick for PvE, maybe?
I think so. I think that's what I would do, yeah. Okay, there we go.
Now you have the gnomes. Now this is going to sound hilarious, but their small size actually like works to their advantage. There was many guilds out there who were PvP guilds, which had some form of like play on the I can't click the gnome theme. Add that to with escape artist and like stealthing and all that sort of stuff. It made for gnome rogues to be quite a good pick for PvP.
Yeah, escape artist is really good. Now the question is though, it's probably still a decent pick simply because mason sword specialization and perception, like, you can't really compete with that, right? Even like escape artist isn't, because just like we said before multiple times, like being able to get the jump and through perception being able to see what's coming at you in advance, escape artist gets you out of movement impairing effects, but a lot of that is going to come from rogues, and if you can already get the jump on them, that's going to make a big difference. So, and mason sword spec, like, it's really good for rogues, so I would definitely say for PvP, like, decent pick. And for PvE, I still think it's decent pick. I don't think it's the worst. I think they're better than night elves because engineering specialization. Like, if you're gonna be a rogue, if you go engineering, like 5 extra thing doesn't make that big of a difference, but like, I feel like the 5 nature resistance on the night elf makes even less of a difference. So if you're not going to be an engineer, then I guess escape artist is still probably better than anything you like the nature resistance from night elf. Let's just say, like, gnome isn't a very good pick either for PvE for rogue. Like, it's really bottom of the barrel compared to a human or even a dwarf. But I'm gonna have to say decent pick because, like, night elves are just probably pretty bad for PvE. That's how I feel about it anyway. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so we're gonna put them decent for both. horde time. So we got orc rogues.
They're decent picks for rogues. You've got axe specialization. I believe rogues could use one-handed axes. I could be absolutely wrong with that because I never played a rogue in although rogues might be thinking about hunters actually.
Okay, so I'm also a bit fuzzy on
Maces
this.
and daggers and swords, I think, were the rogue's toolkit. So the axe specialization may or may not be good.
Yeah, I feel like for subtlety you had to use daggers or something, like like there were certain abilities you had to have a dagger or something, maybe.
Yeah, backstab I don't think you could use without a dagger.
So like if you were assassination, I think you could use swords, and then if you were like combat, then you could use, that was more the spec to use maces because for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's actually starting to ring. You'd think I'd know this, considering like my partner in crime for all these years actually like mained a rogue for so long, but I don't really remember.
Yeah, I feel like they might be able to use axes, one-handed axes, but I think that might potentially lock them out of certain abilities.
Yeah, so then that's not as great. I know the Blood Fury was good. I can't remember what Hardiness did. But yeah, I do remember just all-round Orc being a fairly decent pick for Rogue, but it was not the best. The best was Undead.
Hardiness actually is a really big deal, because that was the one that got you out of stuns. It made you like an extra percentage.
Oh, that's the stun resist, is it?
Yeah, so it was actually like pretty good, like pretty strong.
Yeah, I tried to roll an Orc once, and I just couldn't do it. I got to like level 10 as an Orc hunter, and I'm like, no, I can't play this. Like, I just can't play this race.
Wait, why?
I just couldn't get into it. I just couldn't get into it. I just.
Oh, were you female orc?
Sorry?
Female orc?
Yeah, I was a female orc. I just couldn't get into it. I can't actually play male characters. I've tried, can't do it.
Me too.
It just doesn't work for me.
Me too, but I actually really like playing orc females. So I find that I can't get into undead. I've played them. Like I've gotten, when I did Project 60, I had like a level 60 undead for raiding.
Hello. Is that why? Because of their voices?
No, I don't know what it is. I don't like the class or the race fantasy of being an undead, I guess. They seem kind of evil. Like I know it's not their fault, but
they seem kind of evil. Yeah, I guess they are, because they're like undead zombie kind of people.
Morally questionable. I don't really,
Morally grey. We're going back to morally grey, are we? So yes, I would say that they're a decent pick for both PvE and PvP as a rogue. I do actually remember quite a lot of orc rogues around in vanilla.
Yeah, my cat is here. Oh no, he's gonna be loud and meow. Okay, I definitely, like, I'm a bit on the fence. I think hardiness is, like, really, really good. But as in PvE, you're not really gonna be getting hit a lot. So I think for PvE, I definitely agree that they're just a decent pick. But are you sure, like, I mean, I guess I understand that they're not the best pick for PvP because Will the Forsaken. But isn't hardiness like really good for a rogue for PvP?
Yeah, because basically back in the day, you'd have stuns coming in from warriors, rogues, and hunters. I guess you could occasionally get bashed by a resto druid if they knew what they were doing, but that doesn't really last very long. So it's here nor there in PvP. And the hard counter for a rogue was a warrior. I still don't think they're as strong as undead
I
in
agree.
PvP.
No, I agree.
Yeah, because while they're good against warriors, they're not as great against a wide variety of classes as the undeads are.
No, I agree. I agree that they're not the best pick. I just wanted to make it, clear that like they're pretty good. If you wanted to be an orc for whatever reason, like hardiness is pretty good, I think. So I put decent for both. Undead, like we were saying, cannibalize can be helpful for leveling or for farming a bit, but it's not really useful for PvE like in dungeon, obviously like in dungeons or in raids. Will of the Forsaken can be useful in dungeons and raids, but ideally, like in an ideal situation, if you're trying to min-max, you probably wouldn't need it. You have a lot of other like solutions for that kind of thing. You're not, on the Horde you should have Tremor Totem for fears, like you should have, I don't know, I just feel like there's not going to be a time where you're super benefiting in like a min-max scenario from Will of the Forsaken for PvE.
Yeah, I probably would have picked Orc as being the best for PvE as a rogue. But there was a lot of undead rogues. I don't know if it was because of class fantasy or whatever, but there was a lot of undead rogues in the Horde side. At least for PvP, like they've got too many good things. You've got Will of the Forsaken, you've got Cannibalize, you've got Shadow Resistance. So as a rogue, you basically terror on two legs for a warlock, for a priest, mostly for a warrior because they've got like a fear as well. So yeah, like for PvP, definitely the best pick, an undead rogue.
Okay, I can put them for best pick. I wasn't sure, like I'm a bit on the fence about orcs being the best for PvP. For PvE rogues. I wasn't sure if like is Blood Fury better than Berserking and Beast Slaying for Troll? Like that's where I was kind of unsure.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, I will change that then. Okay, how does that look?
That looks better. I know I'm going to come across as really harsh when it comes to trolls, but their ratios really let them down in like a wide variety of areas.
Yeah, there's not a lot of beast stuff in even dungeons or raids, especially not endgame content like fighting beasts. If there were, it would be a little bit better, I feel. But Berserking, I think from what I understand, the majority of a rogue's damage comes from their auto attacks, and Berserking would make them attack faster. But considering like there's diminishing returns at the end of the day on how fast you can attack, and rogues are already super fast, Blood Fury, like, does that give a extra attack like percent, or like what exactly does that give?
I just thought Berserking did a flat speed increase.
Yeah, Berserking does just do a flat speed increase, but at Blood Fury for orcs.
Oh no, that gave you attack power.
Right. So, probably, yeah, I can see that, because, like I said, with Berserking, it makes you faster, but you're already so fast that I feel like there'd be diminishing returns, whereas, like, having a flat damage increase, plus you're doing so many attacks, orcs probably better.
Yeah, so I would say that they're probably worst pick for like both PvP and PvE. But they do look cool, so they should get style points. This is for the troll rogues.
I don't know if they really look that cool. Like, I feel like when a troll is dual wielding, it's like, what is it? Like, it's passive stationary attack animation where it's like swaying back and forth. Looks kind of silly.
If you think that's silly, then you should look at female troll warriors two-handed attack animation. I tried to play a troll warrior once and I couldn't get past the animation, so I didn't play it any further than like level 3.
I heard that trolls have a really good animation for hunters, though.
Yeah, they look pretty cool for hunters.
Okay, so let's move on to warriors. Okay, this is gonna be easy. I mean, well, easy in a way, but because they actually can be any race, it gives more options. So I feel like it kind of depends on if you're going to be a tank or a DPS warrior. But we're going to kind of talk overall, because most players might respec at a certain point. They might, you know, if you're going to PvP, you're probably not doing that in prot at all. So you might still be prot in PvE, and then you might respec to arms. Or you might be Fury for PvE, and then you might respec to arms for PvP. But like, there's no Fury warriors in PvP, at least at the start of vanilla, right? Like, none. It's only kind of like late vanilla that any would really even PvP, right?
Yeah, mostly if you're going to PvP, you're going to PvP as arms.
Yeah, I figured. So it's kind of a mixed bag. We have to kind of pick what would be best for the warriors overall, considering that they'd want to respec and like be anything. That being said, we've talked about diplomacy, pretty good for PvE, depending on, you know, the amount of hours you have to invest. Perception is just very good for PvP. It doesn't really help you for PvE. Spirit's not going to help you at all. Mason Sword Spec is like really good, but the question is, what do you want to do? Like, I feel like humans are probably the best overall pick for PvE and PvP for warrior.
Yeah. I know gnomes were very, very good for PvP because they got a free action potion in Escape Artist. And that was incredibly handy for warriors because they just didn't have that as a base tool in their kit. So lots of warriors back in vanilla would carry around 50 million free action potions. So if they were ever ganked or attacked, they could get out, and then they could like charge and intercept and do their thing that they did.
Well, I'm going to put them down as best for PvE. PvP, I mean, I feel like I can't really comment.
I'd still probably put them down as best for PvP only because perception. Like,
that's what I'm thinking too.
And also Mason Sword Spec is pretty decent if you were gonna like. I know most arms warriors would run around with Arcanite Reapers, so it doesn't really give anything. But if you did want to use a sword or mace, it boosted that at least a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like Escape Artist is like very, very good. But I don't think that I would, if I was just trying to roll a warrior for PvP, I was going to be arms, and I wanted to pick the best thing. I feel like human I feel like Perception is just better than Escape Artist, even though Escape Artist is really good.
Yeah, see, I'd probably actually end up rolling the gnome.
Well, that's the other thing is, like you said, that gnomes are smaller. Like, that's also kind of an additional benefit. Gnomes
And
get,
most PvP is... Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, gnomes get more agility too, base agility, but...
Yeah, strength is the warrior's bag, though. Engineering spec, but this might sound strange, but most PvPers, if you are like twinking, you'd go engineering because you'd get the gimmicky stuff that you could, so like net throwers and all that sort of stuff as well. So that could also push up the gnome.
The gnome's got really low strength, but I mean 5 points doesn't make a big difference. It's tough. Well, what do you want to put it as? Human warrior for PvP. Is that going to be decent then?
They're both decent. I couldn't actually say which one beat out who though.
Do you want to put them both as best pick? Like they're tied.
Yeah, I guess. I'm also looking at this with a bit of like nostalgia because Skitter's played a gnome warrior as well when we were both playing Alliance by the name of Equinox. So there's that. A funny story, he got to level 60, had his Arcanite Reaper, had like epic mounts and all this sort of stuff, was an off tank in a guild, and he re-rolled because gnomes have 4 fingers and he was playing Freak and he couldn't do it. And he only learnt that after he got to 60 and got an Arcanite Reaper.
And what did he re-roll to?
I believe a Night Elf Hunter by the name of Rock, and we were Rock and Lhok.
Questionable decisions. There's something about world PvP and just getting a bunch of gnomes. And I mean, you won't have healers if you're gnomes only. So, like, let's say a bunch of gnomes and some dwarf priests. Or some dwarf paladins, right? Wouldn't that just be, like, epic? I feel like just owning people on a gnome is just more valuable than owning people on a human.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Okay, so dwarf. I don't know. I think they're decent for PvP. For PvE, a bit on the fence about them for PvP. I mean, Stoneform is good, especially because rogues are considered a big bad class in vanilla. I'm probably overvaluing the terms of threat a rogue could like do in vanilla because they were just the bane of everyone's existence, leveling up on a PvP server. But yeah, Stoneform is good. Gun specialization, find treasure, because you can't unpick it if it's locked, if you find it, unless you're a blacksmith. Frost resistance wouldn't be too bad, but I don't think it's like going to be make or break.
Yeah, I think they're just decent for both because they don't compare to human, but I feel like they just they're still pretty good. Like for PvE, frost resistance is a big deal for a tank, and stone form is a big deal for a tank. If you're DPSing though, because frost resistance is still like a nice thing, but I'd say decent for sure. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'd say they're decent picks.
Okay. So then night elves. there is a big push in some people, in some groups, for Night Elf warriors because of quickness and because of the additional agility. The fact that they get more dodge. In PvP, maybe because of like the ability to overpower, like, I don't know, is that even beneficial? I feel like it's not all it's cracked up to be in PvE. When you dodge things, you don't get the rage from that. And, like, if you're a DPS warrior, you really shouldn't have that much damage going out to you that the dodge is going to make a difference. If you're the tank, I think threat is more important than the fact that you can dodge things. Like, I think it's such a gamble that you're gonna dodge like a crit or something. That might make a difference, but you know.
Quickness doesn't really give you any benefit. It actually is a detriment if you're thinking in terms of overpower. Because overpower is not when you dodge; it's when your target dodges. So it actually works against the Night Elf in terms of like PvP. So if it was up against a Tauren, if a Night Elf warrior was like up against a Tauren and the Night Elf dodged, the Tauren would be able to overpower them.
Okay.
So
yeah, I got that backwards about overpower. So it actually, that harms you. It makes them able to overpower you more.
Yeah. So I personally don't think, and I didn't actually see a whole ton of Night Elf warriors around. There was a very, very good one on our server, but he was very much in the minority, and he picked the Night Elf because it looked pretty, not because of its like stats or anything like that.
Yeah. So I mean, for PvE, I was gonna go worst pick for Night Elf. What do you think for PvP? I guess it has to be because it's the only thing we haven't picked yet for PvP.
Pretty much.
Oh, 2 strikes. Oh man, the Night Elves aren't looking good in general so far.
From what I remember, lots and lots of people played them because they're the prettiest class. You had all the elves and stuff from Warcraft 3. You had like the continuation of sort of like that story and whatnot. And they're in the Alliance, which was favored as like the good guys. So that's why you saw a lot of elves. But when you actually like sort of had a look at their racials and stuff like that, they were always like pretty like meh.
Yeah, also, since they could be the only druids, that also boosted their numbers. So I feel like Blizzard just knew that, I think they knew what they were doing in terms of balancing out the, what classes, or sorry, what races people rolled, that they had to kind of gimp Night Elf racials in a way to, like, balance out how popular they'd be.
Yeah, so I'd put a gnome as a decent pick for a warrior for PvE, or at
For
least
sure.
that I would.
Yeah, I definitely. They're nowhere near as bad as a Night Elf. The fact that they have Escape Artist can be useful as a tank for sure. Like, you know, it just, that can be really good as a tank. So, for sure, decent pick. There isn't really much else to say about it. Arcane resistance isn't going to make much of a difference to you as a tank. Like, most of the things going out to you aren't arcane. And then expansive mind, completely inconsequential. Engineering spec, like, it's so nothing. Like, 5 points in engineering means nothing. Like, I don't even think there's a difference between being 300 in engineering versus being 305, is there?
Not that much, no.
Yeah, so, like, but, like, does it actually impact anything at all? Is there any difference at all between 300 and 305? Because I know with gathering professions there is a difference. Because there's certain things you can't even do unless you're 305. Like with skinning, you have to have those extra knives. Like with mining, the obsidian, I think you have to be 305 to do it, etc. But crafting?
Not that I remember. Not with crafting that I remember. I remember it with gathering because I was a herbalist. And a leather worker on I was a herbalist on my druid, and alchemist, and I was a leather worker and skinner on my hunter, and definitely I needed to have Finkel's skin, like Finkel's dagger, skinning knife or whatever it was, from
The beast?
UBRS, so I could get the skin of the beast, pristine hide of the beast, and to skin the core hounds of molten core.
Yeah, but I think for crafting professions, it makes literally no difference. So that makes it really like nothing to me. Yeah. So definitely decent for escape artist alone, because that's just how good, like, escape artist carrying the gnomes.
Mm-hmm. Orcs were a decent pick. Like, straight up, we had orcs around as warriors. Like, they looked really cool in their armor with their big shoulder pads. Like, the males at the very least. The female ones, not so much. No.
Now, I'm wondering if orc is better than undead for PvP. Because, like, I get that Will of the Forsaken is better than Hardiness. Like, Will of the Forsaken is better than any of the individual orc racials. But is it better than all of them combined? Because Axe specialization, like you said, it helps with Arcanite Reaper. Hardiness gives you the extra resistance to stuns. Command does nothing for you, that's just for pets. And then Blood Fury gives you extra attack. Like, you have trinkets and stuff. Like, is Will of the Forsaken really... Can't you just stance in PvP too to, like, kind of avoid things, maybe fear with, like, Berserker stance or something? I'm remembering something. But doesn't it make Will of the Forsaken less valuable?
Yes, it does, but it's still a very, very valuable. I would still probably put the Undead Warrior as being the best for PvP, only because if you do stuff up, you've got Will of Forsaken there, like, and the Shadow Res, and Cannibalize for PvP. Like, I definitely feel like the Undead Warrior would still be the best pick, but very, very close behind that would be the Orc.
Yeah. I was wondering if they would be tied, kind of like our human and gnome. But, I could see...
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I could see the undead maybe pulling ahead. I guess it really depends on, the person and the playstyle, and, like, whether you rely on Will of the Forsaken a lot, or if you're good at stance dancing. I'm kind of tempted to put them as tied.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. I definitely think that the orc in PvE would be well and truly more valuable than the undead as a tank, on the very least.
Tank on a horde. Tanking for horde, like, there's so many good options. I feel like it's really hard to pick, and you know this because I personally want to play probably a horde warrior in classic as my main, and deciding has been really difficult for me because, sorry about my dog barking, but I'm pretty sure there was, like, a recent server first where having that extra health on a Tauren made the difference against Nefarian to, you know, not wipe, basically.
Yeah, I was just about to say pretty much all of our main tanks were Tauren. I can't think of too many main tanks that weren't Tauren back in the day of vanilla, of guilds everywhere. So if you wanted to be a main tank, absolutely pick Tauren.
So I kind of want to say if you're being a DPS warrior to pick Orc, and if you're being a tanking warrior to pick Tauren.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. So it makes it a bit hard as to say what's a decent pick, what's the best pick for PvE.
I think I'd want to say for, like, to put them both, like, tied, our first PvE tied for best pick, because it really depends if you're doing tanking or DPS.
That works.
Now PvE for undead, I'm gonna say
It's a decent pick. I'd say troll is worst pick for PvE for warrior.
It's hard. Maybe. I think I'm leaning towards being a troll, like myself, but I don't think that they're that much worse than undead. Like I feel like they're kind of. I know that we don't want to be like tying on worst pick, but when we don't even have a decent pick. But I feel like a troll is still pretty good because the thing is you get additional threat with berserking because you can hit more, and that's like that matters a lot more, that you get extra hits to generate more threat.
I don't ever really remember too many troll warriors. That's pretty much my take on it. I don't really remember too many trolls apart from hunters.
But cannibalize, like for PvE, it obviously helps you when you're farming and when you're leveling, especially leveling. Like leveling, it's really good. Shadow resistance, that's also pretty good as a tank. That can be good. Will of the Forsaken is also good. But you get extra threat as a troll. So, okay, I guess undead we can go decent pick, and then I can see, yeah, troll being worst pick. But I feel like all of the races on the Horde are like so close for a warrior. Like I feel like Orc and Tauren are like just above, and then the other two are like just behind. Like I feel like you can realistically go with any of them.
Sorry for talking over the top. You can have them as decent picks, and we don't have to have a worse pick for. We'll do this for the poor embattled trolls.
Yeah, because like they're gonna be orange down the whole board if we don't give them a yellow. But at the same time, like honestly, you can't go wrong picking a race as a warrior on Horde. Like I feel like you're not gonna be at a disadvantage even if you go troll, because you still like that's still a valuable thing, I feel. PvP, their worst pick though. Rip.
Absolutely.
And Tauren for PvP, what's your opinion on that? I guess, are they even decent? I mean, they get extra health. War Stomp is good.
Yes.
What is Endurance?
Extra health.
Oh, that's just their extra health, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, we can put them decent.
There's a running joke, or there used to be back in the day, that 60% were undead, 30% were Tauren, and the rest were like orcs and trolls. And that's what the Horde was.
Why were there so many Tauren? Just because they're racials?
And the fact that they could be druids.
True.
And
yeah,
shaman.
Like everyone goes undead, basically, TLDR.
Pretty much.
I won't, because I just don't like playing undead. But I'll be the one troll warrior then. Just for the pink hair. Okay, mages. Human mages.
I like to beat up mages in PvP. Huh?
Okay, Mason Sword Spec useless. Human Spirit, pretty much useless. Like, you're gonna have a bunch of... For a racial... Like, I'm not saying Spirit is useless. I'm not saying Spirit is a useless stat for a mage. I'm saying the racial is, like, not really gonna give you, like, much to talk about at all. Diplomacy is nice for PvE. Perception is useless for PvE. So, if spirit is the only thing carrying you, like the human spirit is the only plus you've got for a human mage, right? Like, that's not much to write home about, that's all I'm saying.
Come on, that's like, what, 5, maybe 10 extra, like, drinks you could make for your raid? Maybe, like, 15 mana buns? Come on, that's great. To be fair, that's pretty much all you're going to be brought for anyway. Oh, and portals? A second, maybe another 2, 3 portals that the mage can pump out?
Well, I mean, you've only got 2 choices. You got a human or a gnome. And compared to the gnome, the human is obviously going to be the worst pick. Whether you got some extra, like, doesn't the gnome just from like sheerly having expansive mind make them create more mana buns than the human anyway, regardless of the spirit?
Correct.
So yeah, human is the worst pick.
Mage is just a bad pick.
Like, I feel like there's a bit more discussion to be had with PvP. Like, maybe it's still the worst, but, like, perception is a nice thing. At least you have that in PvP. If you see the rogue, then you can, like, Cone of Cold him or something. Blink away.
I don't know, man. I never really liked mages. Mages were like basically pet fodder for hunters, and they never really bothered druids because druids could get out of everything. So,
Well, if a mage sees a rogue, is that better than the mage having escape artist? Because the thing is, I feel like if you're getting like a movement impairing effect as a mage, you're probably kind of screwed anyway. Because you're so squishy, you're the glass cannon, like you need to have control, you need to stay away, you need to kite, you need to like not be, I mean, it depends, maybe you're a palm pyro or whatever, but even then, that just means that you're even in more danger. And I just feel like escape artist isn't going to make as big a difference for you. I'm almost thinking that for PvP, human and gnome are kind of tied as like just I don't know. Neither of them seem like that overly amazing to me.
okay, if I had to pick, I'd probably go gnome because they're small and escape artist, but perception is really strong for PvP. Like you said, like if you could see the rogue, you could pop him out. So I think both gnome and humans are a decent pick. I couldn't really say what the best pick was because I don't play mages. I don't like the playstyle. I just straight up can't play them. I don't think that's bad to say. I have every respect for people who play mages well, but I know next to nothing about them apart from that they're very squishy glass cannons and I can beat them up on a hunter.
Alright, so I just put them as decent for both. I mean, that basically means nothing. Like, we could be putting best pick for both at that point. But I just feel like neither of their racials are, like, very important on Alliance. You can basically pick whichever one you want. If you're just rolling for the sake of PvP, I feel like you can just pick either one. It kind of depends on your playstyle. If you actually use perception to hunt out the stealth people and to like be more aggressive, if you're more running into situations where you want to use escape artist, then maybe gnome would be better for you. I mean, it's also nice, of course, to have the arcane resistance and the extra intellect. But and gnomes being small, like you said, but perception is just really strong. So maybe gnome might be a little bit higher, like maybe a little bit, but they're pretty neck and neck. I feel like I don't feel like it matters that much on Alliance.
No, I don't. I think mage is one of those classes that if you play it really well, then you're fantastic at it. But if you play it like poorly, it doesn't matter what race you are. You're just going to be run rampant over anyway.
Yeah, but like escape artist, right? You already have other ways of control. You have other ways of oops button, like getting out. I feel like perception gives you an extra thing in your toolkit like you just wouldn't otherwise have. And although arcane resistance like is a thing, like how often are you really getting hit by arcane stuff? Like Moonfire spam? There's not, like, in PvP, there's not arcane mages that often, right? And, like, what other kind of arcane damage do you get? I don't think you're gonna be running into, like, balanced druids casting arcane spells on you, like starfalling you or whatever, like, it's just not really a big deal, the arcane resistance, right?
Yeah, I guess. I'm very sorry, guys, for watching, because if you're watching, because I know next to nothing about mages. I've seen a couple of really good players play them over the years, but yeah, I've never been able to get into them. So as far as like the horde goes, I'd I'd have to say undead is probably best for PvP. I know of a few troll mages. Like there was definitely more troll mages around than any of the other sort of
Trolls. If it was a troll,
trolls.
it's probably
Yeah,
a mage or a hunter.
yeah, pretty much. But I think that's because there was only like two selections you could have, which was like undead and troll. So if you didn't like playing undead, then the only option you had was troll.
Right. Well, no question, PvP, Undead's definitely the best. Cannibalize, Shadow Resistance, Will the Forsaken. If you, for some reason, want to be trolly and go down to the bottom of the bridge in Arathi Basin and, like, hide there and cast your little, like, mage spells at people and annoy them, you get underwater breathing.
I know of undead warriors that would hide out underneath the water in Stranglethorn and then charge out at people as they were trying to like do things.
This is totally off topic, but you just reminded me, because we're on the topic of trolly things, you just reminded me of people hunters taming. Do you remember in Durotar, in like the Valley of Trials, there was this scorpion that you had to kill as like one of the first quests you did, and hunters would tame the scorpion, name it after the NPC. They would go up to that like ridge where it was, kill the
Something's happened.
Okay, I think we should be back now. I have no idea what happened. My internet went out for like a second, which has like never happened to me ever except for now. So that's really inconvenient, but hopefully the stream is back. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like it just everything went quiet, so I'm like, hello.
Okay, we're back now, I think. I think it's live again. Sorry about that, guys. I have no idea why it cut out like that. That's my bad. That my internet just dropped.
So where were we? We were discussing mages, and we were discussing where we were going to put the trolls.
Okay. So sorry. Yes, we still had PvE undead versus trolls for mages. I feel like troll might be better than undead for PvE. Like arguably, because at least the regeneration and the berserking like is kind of useful to an extent.
Yeah. I could see both undead and troll being decent picks for PvE. Nothing really like if we're gonna go like for full min maxing, I'd probably put trolls ahead of undead. Undead definitely are the better for PvP, like just hands down. But the trolls definitely are a good pick for PvE.
Okay, so I'll put troll for best pick then for PvE, and then undead, I don't really want to put them as worst pick. Like, it's not like they're bad or something, so maybe we should just put them as decent. Or is that like already inflating how good undead looks?
No, it's alright. Undead are pretty damn good. I think everyone sort of like acknowledges that.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hey, but trolls got a green now.
Yay for trolls.
Alright, druids, I already just put them as like green. Because there's only one choice, so there's not really a point in discussing that at all.
Although, if you were going to pick the best pick for a druid, I would probably pick a Tauren. The extra endurance when you turn into bear is pretty amazing. War Stomp's pretty amazing. The nature resist is like on both, so that's null. Shadow Meld, it really only comes into its own if you're going to be a feral druid. Depending on what patch comes in, not very many people played feral druids back in the day. Certainly like not before the leader of the pack patch. It had been unheard of for you to be raiding as a feral druid. Dodge is nice, but it's neither here nor there, especially considering you're going to be a resto druid for mostly. So, and resto druids, when played well, you should be able to move away and get out of everything. And if someone's wailing on you or attacking you, even in a dungeon, you just turn into a bear anyway. So, if it is if you are looking for absolute min maxing on the racials and on the like for the class of a druid, I definitely would go a Tauren over a night elf.
No, I agree with that. Pretty much the only time you'd really consider doing a night elf instead is if you're going to be a cat druid, just like Lhok said, and that's probably not that likely. It's interesting looking at it actually how both night elves and Tauren are the only druids and they both get the nature resistance.
I think the lore purposes behind it is that the night elves live in trees and the Tauren worship the Earth Mother, so that's probably it. Hunters! Good old hunters. For PvP, I actually probably would go a night elf hunter over a druid.
A druid?
I meant dwarf. I just hate dwarves that much. It's just like, oh, okay. I'm just going to replace you with a class. Sorry to the dwarf players out there.
I feel like they're both decent. Gun specialization isn't going to help you as much as you'd think because I'm pretty sure like for Molten Core, best in slot, or like pre-Molten Core is just a bow, like bows I'm pretty sure, and then from past Molten Core it's crossbows. Like pretty much that one Neltharion crossbow that drops off Neltharion is like best in slot for like ever. And then I think if you're a dwarf, I think you have the option of getting this one gun from AQ40, but it's only like on par with the crossbows if you're a dwarf because of the gun specialization. So you get an extra option. But that's the only gun that you're ever going to even potentially use. And if you're not a dwarf, you don't even touch that weapon because it's not good enough if you don't have the gun spec. So I feel like gun specialization overall is pretty like inconsequential. Are there any good guns for PvP?
Not really, no. It's mostly all crossbows and bows.
Yeah, so unfortunately, like you'd think that would help you out, but it really doesn't. Frost resistance for PvE for a hunter doesn't matter. Find treasure for a hunter, it's like not exactly special. Like I don't think it really matters that much. Stone form. I feel like you probably maybe if you were kiting stuff, and there was some kind of like debuff that you could get out of with stone form, but then it still slows you. So it wouldn't really be useful for a hunter anyway. Like I feel like you don't really want to be slowed as a hunter. But are you able to use like I guess you could use stone form and then like disengage or something. It might help you in some capacity.
No, not hugely, no.
So yeah, I want to say for PvE, dwarf is worst pick. Is it the same for PvP too? You think?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Sorry, dwarves. And then that just tells us, we got best pick for night elves. But let's kind of explain why. I mean, Shadow Meld in itself isn't amazing, but when mixed with Feign Death, you can do some interesting things. And the skill cap on hunters is so high, and like both in PvP and in PvE, you're going to be utilizing your actual skill at the class and utilizing like in order to kite things. You're going to be using all these things in your toolkit in terms of like mobility and control. So I think Shadow Meld can still be useful on a hunter. It's a nice thing to have in your toolkit.
It absolutely is amazing to have in your toolkit. I remember when the Bestial Wrath change came in as a hunter in Arathi Basin, I could basically hide in a bush and shadow meld and Bestial Wrath and watch my cat solo people while I was hiding in the shadows.
And then you can drop combat with Feign Death, so that helps out with your Shadow Meld.
Absolutely, it was great.
Quickness is also not bad because if you were to be like a melee hunter or something, let's say, you might be using the monkey aspect of the monkey, is it? And then you get like super dodge, so that's like very beneficial if you are being a melee hunter for whatever reason. And then for the like in terms of the stats, you just as a night elf you get the highest base agility stat, so that like the dwarf only gets 16 agility. That's like a whole 9 points different, so that's something to consider too.
Especially if you're playing a hunter and you're in PvP, one of the things that a good hunter would do was try and get up into the dead zone of another hunter, and they used to try and keep that hunter in that dead zone, and it was called jousting. And a night elf hunter with the quickness and aspect of the monkey should be able to get the upper hand on almost all other hunters by doing that. It was one of my favorite things to do, was to joust other hunters and beat the crap out of them in the dead zone.
My cat is back, so I'm sorry if you do hear him, but in terms of the dead zone, that is going to come into play with our horde races here for Hunter, because now you have 3 choices, and I'm not sure how much it really impacts the dead zone, but Tauren, from what I understand, they, for some reason, because their actual model was bigger, the range for people to hit them and for them to hit others was different by like 2 yards, I believe. So I think that impacted the size of their dead zone. I think Taurens actually had a smaller dead zone than other people because they could melee from an additional 2 yards away. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was how it worked, so that's gonna come into play here. Now for orcs, command is actually, this is like one of the few times command is going to be useful. It's very strange to me, just like as an aside, I find it pretty strange how they would put in something that only works for pet classes as a racial when there's only 2 pet classes, but anyways, command, that increases your pet's damage, and then axe specialization, you might be using an axe if you're survival, I guess, but that's pretty much, like, unless you're a melee hunter, that's not going to help you, of course. Unless, well, I don't know. In PvP, you kind of, you are forced to use melee if people are, like, in your face sometimes, right? So if you were wielding an axe, that might help you.
Yeah, or if you were like me and chose to joust other hunters and stuff like that to put pressure on them, I could see that being useful for an orc. The orc would definitely be the anti night elf hunter for in terms of like jousting and that sort of stuff. Um, I do believe that the worst pick out of the hunters, unfortunately, was the Tauren, and that the orc or the troll was like the decent pick was the troll, and the best pick was the orc, if I'm remembering it correctly. Although there was many Tauren hunters because Taurens were cool.
Yep. I feel like the only reason undead isn't the best is simply because you can't be undead. Otherwise, they, like, just the sheer fact that there's no Will of the Forsaken in the equation, it's like, okay, so orcs are now the best pick.
Yeah. The other thing is, this is something that if you did want to play a Tauren hunter, you might want to have to take into consideration. The Tauren hunters, when you get to level 10, you would get a tame pet quest, and you'd go and tame various pets. Now, the Tauren had a tame pet called the Swoop. The Swoop had a knockback effect that would happen twice within a tame beast cast, because it's only 20. Tame beast is 20 seconds. The knockback is 10. So what you ended up having to do as a Tauren was either outlevel it and get your frost trap, or go to Durotar and get sticky glue from the quests at the Senjin village and come back and do your swoop taming, or employ a rogue to come and like crowd control the swoop so you could tame it. So that's just a little bit of trivia there that you might not know, but you should probably take into consideration if you're going to go down the Tauren road, because it was endless frustration for me when I was going to do that.
Especially if you're rolling a Tauren as your first character on a fresh server, because, like, later down the road you can send yourself sticky glue, you can buy sticky glue and, like, mail it to your character off the auction house, but it's not really an option at the start, and then everyone is going to be in the same frustration boat as you. You're going to be lagging behind the curve because you've been forced to go that entire trek just to do the quest. You have to walk all the way there, struggle for a long time, and go all the way back. It's a lot worse than the other hunter quests in terms of time commitment. So I kind of put Tauren as the worst and then Troll as decent. They do get bow specialization, which, as I mentioned, like, for leveling, it'll give you a little bit of a boost, but you're not hit capping anyway. You're not, like, really, the you know, chance for things to block and parry. If you're in a dungeon, chances are you're gonna, if the tank's good and they're facing the mobs properly, you're gonna be shooting at their back anyway. So they're not gonna be able to block and parry. And then it slightly increases your chance to crit. But, like, I feel like for the leveling, you know, up until before your best in slot, at level 60 basically, it's not going to make a big difference, and then you're not going to be using bows except for Molten Core, probably. So I feel like it's not that good. Regeneration just, like, isn't good. Beast slaying you'd think might be, like, slightly better for a hunter, but really, do you care? Like, going and taming animals, you're still not attacking them. and then berserking, you're not standing there and auto-attacking on a hunter. Like, it doesn't, because most of your abilities are instant cast, the extra haste doesn't really, like, matter, right?
Yeah, pretty much. They're a decent pick, but I wouldn't say that they're the best pick. Trolls also do look pretty cool with their shooting animations and whatnot as well.
I would almost say that for a troll, they might be worst pick, like tied with Tauren for PvP, I feel like. Because bow specialization is like the only thing carrying them to being decent. But from what I could be wrong about this, but I heard something about the shooting animation, like for a hunter on a troll, that if you were doing the weird, like, I guess, I'm not sure if it was specifically jousting, but some kind of weird thing to do with the skill cap of hunters, that like there was something about the troll animation being slightly quicker that made it better.
It would be jump kiting, yeah. So jump kiting was like you'd run up, you'd throw out a cuss shot, and you'd run off, then you'd quickly turn around, cuss shot, run off, quickly spin around, cuss shot, and then continue on, as what hunters were renowned for. But yes, the troll was slightly faster with that animation, much like the night elves were faster with their animation.
Okay, so that's what I thought. So with that in mind, I feel like that mixed with the bow spec is the only thing like going for the troll that the Tauren doesn't have. If you weren't using a bow, if it weren't for that weird like animation thing, I'd feel like they were pretty much equally bad. But
the regeneration for a troll hunter is quite good for PvP. It's very.
I guess as well, if you're like kiting for like a really long time, I guess it can help.
So troll for hunter is a decent pick, I would say.
Fair enough. Okay, warlocks. That's me. I know I said that I'm gonna main a warrior, but in original vanilla I made a warlock. So I was a human warlock, but yeah, I feel like for PvE, diplomacy is really strong. Spirit is still like pretty useful for a warlock. Perception and mace spec aren't. Now, really, we're just deciding between humans and gnomes here, and the intellect of a gnome is very good for a warlock, but ooh. Thank you for subscribing. Pick one. Thank you very much. And thank you for checking out the stream. Yeah, so for warlocks, I feel like there isn't that big of a difference in PvE between the gnome and the human. Everyone says that humans are better. Sorry, take that back. Everyone says that gnomes are better, because if you're trying to min-max, obviously for DPS output, gnomes are going to be better. But I think, like, if you're not talking about hardcore rating and just DPS numbers, if you're talking about PvP as a whole, like I said this before, I really like diplomacy. Like, I think that's like a really good benefit, but I guess I would put gnome as like best pick for PvE, and then human as decent pick for PvE. I don't really want to put them as worst, because like diplomacy is still like a very valid reason to choose them over gnome if you're like not obsessed with your numbers, because that little bit of intellect isn't going to make that much of a difference, especially on a warlock, because you're life tapping, you're using your health as a resource, stamina is a big thing for you. Like, it's not as big a deal as a mage or somebody else who's solely relying on mana.
As far as PvP goes, they're both decent picks. You've got Escape Artist with the gnome that can like get them out of things. You've got Perception. I know, depending on your spec and stuff like that for Warlocks, it's reduced by the Fell Puppy, but it actually stacks with the Fell Puppy's Paranoia. and so then you actually get to see them better. So honestly, I don't really think there is like a worse pick between both human and gnome for PvP. I think they're both decent, and I wouldn't say one is better than the other.
Fair enough. I agree. Some people might disagree. Some people might be really obsessed with picking a gnome, I feel. But I would agree, like, perception does stack with the foul puppy, and though it's not adding a new thing to your toolkit, like you already can detect, it helps you a bit. And you might not have that pet out, or it might have been killed, and then you have this now. So it doesn't hurt. I put them as tied for best pick, but for PvE, what do you think? Like, I'm thinking human is, I'll put them slightly behind, because diplomacy is like less, for some players it's not important at all. For some players it's a waste of a racial, because they're willing to put in the time, and the fact that it's not helping them min-max in any way means that it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, I think escape artist is actually like really strong for both a PvP and a PvE kind of thing. So, like I know technically you shouldn't be getting stunned, or like you have your little thing, but I think it adds an extra tool that a warlock would just not have as a means. With the humans, I think that diplomacy is strong. Perception, it doesn't require for you're not requiring perception for PvE. Human spirit is interesting because like it gives you back mana faster, so a human warlock wouldn't have to life tap as much.
And actually, it'll give you mana and health back, which as a warlock, like if you've life tapped, then you're going to be basically getting double the regeneration. Both your health per second and your mana per second are both helping.
Yeah, so I would have said that they're both a best pick. Like I couldn't like in my own mind. I couldn't really. It comes down to whether or not you actually want to play a gnome or a human. Like they're both strong for both roles.
Fair enough. I feel like for me personally, and because I did play a warlock, I feel like gnomes are just a bit better. Like even with the arcane resistance, like you said, escape artist, perception just isn't as good on a warlock as everyone else because of the fell puppy, I feel. So I feel like they're just like slightly worse.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, I played an undead warlock alongside my resto druid and my hunter, so I don't really know too much in terms of like alliance side of things. I do know I saw a lot of gnomes as warlocks. That if I was going to think back as to like what race class combination I saw the most of for the alliance, it would probably be gnome warlocks.
Yeah, and again, being short is useful too.
Yeah, following up like being like the human paladin, being like the other iconic alliance class race combo that I saw. So you had your human paladins and your gnome warlocks. So for the horde, undead, it's just too strong again.
For PvP, yeah, I would definitely agree. Most of the orc things are for like melee classes, really. Like hardiness, again, okay, you can resist stuns, but chances are, like, if you're being stunned by a rogue or something, you're not going to resist them all. Like, it's not going to save you from the stun lock. You're so squishy, it's not going to save you from anything, really. If you're getting... Most stuns come from like physical attacks on you, and if you're being physically attacked and you've managed to like let somebody get that close to you, you're kind of screwed already. Like they can interrupt you, let alone stun you.
Yeah, a lot of orcs that I saw that were warlocks used to play with a succubus. They traded their fell puppy's paranoia for the succubus in order to actually be able to seduce melee classes, or they would swap. They would fear the warrior or the rogue. Mostly it was rogues. They would have their fel puppy out, then they'd fear the rogue. Then they would summon their succubus, and then they would then use the succubus to interrupt and help CC the rogue while they killed them. I'm not sure if it was just the warlocks that I played around with in Battlegrounds and in the world that did this, or if it was just like a game-wide sort of way that the Orc warlocks played around it. But Orc warlocks are certainly strong. They just weren't undead strong when it came to PvP.
Succubus was the damaging pet. It does a lot more damage than the fel puppy, and the fact that you have command means that command in itself has more benefit to the succubus than it does to the fel hunter. So I could also see that being maybe part of the logic behind using the succubus.
But yeah, I feel like there was more of a higher skill cap with playing an Orc Warlock than there was for an Undead Warlock. But I certainly do feel that they're a very good pick for PvP, the Orcs.
Then for PvE, I mean, you basically only have the choice between the Undead and the Orc. Shadow resistance is a nice thing. Will of the Forsaken isn't all that useful in PvE, I think, for a Warlock, like in a raid setting. It's still nice, like, but it's just nowhere near as good as it is in PvP, of course. And then Blood Fury is useless, Hardiness in PvE is useless, Command gives you extra damage, Axe Specialization is useless. So basically you're just deciding, do you want to have slightly more damage from your pet in raids and stuff, or do you want to have Will of the Forsaken? And I feel like that's really personal choice. I mean, again, you get the shadow resistance, but as a warlock you already have that like shadow resistance shield thing. You're getting 1 extra point of intellect for an undead, but like that's 1 point. It doesn't really make up for the command, I feel. So it might depend on your spec.
One thing to note though, if you are going to raid as a warlock, you will not be allowed to use your fel puppy, and you will not be allowed to use your succubus. You are limited to imps only, and that's if your raid leader was being nice.
Blood pack OP.
It was also that pets were a liability. As many people probably understand, Geddon with the bomb could actually put it on pets for a while, and warlocks with fel puppies or succubus ran the risk of actually getting the bomb, and they would have to unsummon their pet if they got the bomb, and then because if they didn't, it would go off and all the melee would die. So as a pet class, this applies to hunters as well. Pets in like MC were just not a thing that you were able to take with you. You were mark spec and you had no pet in MC, especially not in Geddon at the very least. But there was the glitch where you could have the pet where you could blow up the auction house if it got the Geddon bomb. And also in Zul Grub, the pets were the reason why we had the blood plague. They got the corrupted blood on them and then were unsummoned, then brought back and plagued everyone. So that is something to be aware of if you're going to raid as a pet class, that you may not be able to take your pets into the raid with you, or you'll be limited to what pets you are able to take.
Well, that's the thing. If you put your imp on passive, then it has this ability that like puts it invulnerable, so it's less of a concern. Succubus also, if they were on passive, they of course also they can stealth, but it's pointless for a succubus to be there if it's not attacking. Whereas an imp, it can just sit there and at least it's providing blood pact. But also the fact that imps are ranged.
Yeah, you can't really go wrong with an imp. Because they also have phase shift too, don't they?
Yeah, that's what I was saying with the invulnerability thing.
Ah, okay.
So, at the end of the day, like the command for an orc, I feel like it's not as good as undead. I mean, it's so debatable. They're pretty close, but I'm kind of tempted to put undead as the best and orc as decent, just like we did for PvP.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Shadow resistance for Nax might be helpful, like, I don't know.
Yes and no. I mean, it's not going to make or break, to be honest.
Oh, of course. But I feel like Will the Forsaken, I guess it'll help you in like 5-mans more than anything. I feel like in a 40-man environment as a warlock, like, you're not really going to be in a situation where you need an extra out button for that. I don't know. But you could, so it's still helpful. And cannibalize is still like a nice thing on a warlock because you can life tap and then cannibalize. And that like speeds up your leveling a lot, or like if you're farming or whatnot. So now we're moving into the classes that are only Horde or only Alliance, so that kind of like limits our options a lot. We're almost done, I guess. So we have Shaman next.
Yeah, there's the troll meme of now I play a troll shaman, totems thing. I always have a soft spot for Tauren. Orcs were quite good as shaman as well, so it makes it a bit difficult as to see who the best race is.
Having played Alliance, I don't really know much about shamans, like even how they worked back in vanilla, so it's really hard for me to comment. But
it depended on which spec you played. I mean, if you were going to roll Enhance, one of the best weapons an Enhance shaman could use was the pig on the stick, the Unstoppable Force from Alterac Valley. And that's a mace. So the axe specialization didn't really like help too much there. And the reason why the Unstoppable Force was such a good weapon for Enhanced Shamans, it was a slower cast, slower speed mace. So it hit like a truck when you got hit by it. And if a shaman got lucky and got a triple wind fury proc, you would just die in one hit from this thing. So, I mean, looking back on it, the extra stamina and the extra strength, I mean, might put an edge over for an enhanced shaman. I think they used strength back then. For PvP might help. Blood Fury definitely was, and Hardiness was a good choice for a PvP shaman to take. Aspect could even help still, like with that. Troll would probably be my worst pick out of the three races, only because not a lot of their racials actually help at all. Berserking is probably the only thing that I would say that would help with a shaman. So for PvP, at the very least, it would be troll worst, decent pick orc. Best would be, for me anyway, sorry, decent pick would be Tauren. Best pick would be orc for PvP. For PvE, it's much and much really like an orc and a Tauren will perform the same. with troll being the worst.
So I'm thinking that orc might actually be best for PvE if you're gonna be that shaman who, like the token enhancement shaman who uses Nightfall. I feel like I don't know if that was actually done back in vanilla, but apparently nowadays in private servers, what they do is they'll have either a hunter or sometimes a ret paladin, but usually a hunter or a shaman who will come and use that Nightfall axe that procs like a damage. I think it's a DPS boost to casters or something. Do you know how that works?
No, I have no idea. That wasn't a thing, at least on any of the servers that I played on. I believe Nightfall came from Nax, so when we were going through MC, it just wasn't in the game. You didn't bring an enhancement shaman to MC, you didn't bring an enhancement shaman to Blackwing where they were resto, and if they wanted to play enhanced for PvP, they'd have to respec and go and do that. Resto is still a good choice for PvP. It's just not as good if you want to like blow people up very quickly on the PvP side of things. So if Nightfall Enhancement Shaman is a thing, then yes, I could definitely see Orc being the best. If it's like how I played it back in the day, then I would say it's a decent pick on par with a Tauren.
Yeah, actually, because Nightfall, how it would work is like if you could get the Wind Furies off, if you were doing it that way with the Wind Fury totem, it depends on, how many shamans are in your raid and what they're all doing and, who's resto and whatnot. But if you're using the Wind Fury totem and you're using Nightfall, then basically you try and hit as much as you can, right? So that you can get the debuff onto the boss. And Berserking might be good for that, actually, because you get to hit more. So I don't know. I don't see. I'm not sure why somebody would pick their race based on the dream of being the one enhanced shaman who uses Nightfall. Like, I feel like most people won't pick their race for that. I feel like they're gonna pick their race for other reasons, for their true like life goal as a shaman, and that might just be like a random after effect. If in Nax they got Nightfall, then people would probably want to bring them for that, right? But I don't feel like that it should really be part of the equation, really, in picking your race. Because what are the chances that you're ever going to get to Nax, get Nightfall, and then be the guy who does that, So maybe there just isn't a best pick for PvE. I feel like I still want to leave Troll as the worst. Even though, like I said, maybe Berserking is better for the Nightfall thing. But I don't really want to base this off of that, like, one niche usage, Poor trolls! That means that they don't have any greens for PvP. They got the one green for PvE.
Yeah, so I'm just having a look into this Nightfall thing. I'm just off screen having a look at this. Apparently, Fury Warriors were given it back in like 2006 in patch 1.12.2. That's the earliest that I can see. But like I said before, I don't actually remember doing progression MC with a person with a Nightfall axe. Apparently, they're part of the Thorium Brotherhood reputations. So I was wrong with Nax because I just assumed because it did shadow damage, it came from Nax. But yeah, I don't actually remember any of our raiders using that. We had a token Fury Warrior, which was terrible, and it took a lot of our healers to actually make sure that he stayed alive. So, I mean, we also did MC with no like dire more gear because it wasn't out when we were doing MC. So then there's that as well. So yeah, as to the Nightfall stuff, I can't really comment on because yeah, we didn't do it because it wasn't a thing when I was in MC.
So I guess all that is to say, if you happen to be a troll shaman and you happen to get Nightfall, congratulations, you might be the best race for that job. But overall, I don't think that makes trolls good as shamans. So wop wop for trolls. So that's the whole horde section filled out. Looking like orcs and undead, very good picks. Tauren a little bit less, and trolls just suck pretty much across the board. Rip.
Yeah, back in the day, the troll racials were not that great. I do believe for the longest time, trolls and troll players would cry to get their racials fixed. So we have paladins left.
I was gonna say, if you want to be a troll, then you can be a mage.
Or any other class combo that you want. I mean, Hunter's not a bad pick for a troll, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you can still be the least, like, you can still be the worst pick, and it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. For the most part. Maybe for Fear Ward it might matter a bit. Or in PvP, I guess it matters a bit, but... Okay, so Paladins. This is like the easiest one. Humans versus Dwarves. I feel like they're pretty same-ish. But in PvE, Mason Sword spec, that's two-handed and one-handed swords, right? So I feel like if you're a Ret Paladin, that would be good. It'd probably be good for all Paladins. For PvE. I mean, except for Holy, because then you're not doing damage. So, Prot Pallies, like, aren't common. Ret Paladin isn't, like, amazing, but some people are Ret Paladin, so maybe Ret Paladin would want to go human. But then, like, I guess the spirit helps you if you're holy, but other than that, there's nothing really other than diplomacy, right? For PvE.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, the iconic sort of race class combos for like what you'd see running around the place was like human paladins, like gnome warlocks, night elf hunters, and dwarf nothings, maybe dwarf priests, if you could find one.
Well, I feel like there's no question for PvP, human is the best. I feel. But for PvE, I think that they might be tied. What do you think?
I would probably put the human above the dwarf for best pick for a paladin. Mace sword spec and human spirit. Human spirit's good if you play a holy paladin. Mace sword spec's great if you play a prot pally or a ret paladin. If you're able to get a slot as a ret paladin.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess human spirit really is good for holy. I just wasn't sure if it was like leaps beyond stone form, because that's really all it comes down to. Obviously for ret and for prot, mason sword spec makes humans better. So yeah, I guess human would be the better pick for both.
Yeah, you got to think that in a PvE environment, you're not really going to come up against like a terrible lot that actually like poisons. So, and a paladin can cleanse it anyway off them by divine shielding if they absolutely have to. So, yeah, it's less likely that you're going to use a stone form over being a human paladin with sword, mace, and human spirit.
Yeah, so I could see the argument for like a dwarf in PvE being decent rather than worst. Like, if it's if people are saying that it's like kind of close, but I think humans, like overall, if we're just gauging overall, like they're better. Diplomacy's really good, spirit's good, regardless of if you're holy or ret or whatever, because they're all using mana, but it's especially good for holy. And then mace and sword spec is good for prot or ret, so I just feel like it's pretty much better than Stoneform in all cases. And just like you said, they have other answers for poisons and stuff.
I'm just looking over the graph. Poor trolls. All the way down the bottom there. I mean, night elves are not that much better.
I'm surprised we've got one worst pick for human, which makes them worse than undead. You know? It's interesting how that happened, because undead are like pretty OP across the board.
Yeah, it's only because of their racial. Of Will of the Forsaken, and Cannibalize is pretty strong too. Shadow Res.
So if anyone is curious about this doc, we have a link to it in the description of the video if anyone wanted to look at it after the fact. You know, now that we've kind of concluded our discussion there, looking at it here, if there's anything you guys disagreed with or any points that we didn't touch on that you think are pretty relevant, feel free to leave them in the comments. Lhok, did you want to end by just kind of saying what you plan to play yourself for Classic if you were given the choice?
Yeah. If I was, I'm interested in playing a shaman, a druid, and a hunter, and I can definitely see myself playing a Tauren shaman and a Tauren druid. And if I had to pick my hunter class, I'd go night elf hunter. I don't know if it's nostalgic, like nostalgia feeding that, because they were my three picks from back in the day. If I did go my warlock again, I'd completely go undead again because it's too strong. But I'm also looking at it because when I played vanilla, I played on a PvP server, so I'm looking at something that I want to play as a whole that I know will be strong, not only in a raid and a battleground, but also something that's going to be able to hold its own in the world. Because if I do play on any server, it would be a PvP server. So they would be my three picks for the three classes that I'm interested in.
My three classes are gonna be warrior, main, warlock, alt, and then priest, like, not even a priority. Like, that's, you know, if I have a ton of extra time on my hands late into the game, that I would, like, have it build up a priest just to be used when, like, a priest was needed, because I just feel like it's a nice thing to have. So I'm considering being a gnome warlock, because I have been a gnome mage before, and there's something about being a gnome I don't like. There's something about being short that feels weird to me, that it's annoying or something. I don't know. I just have more fun playing as a human, and I was a human warlock back in the day, so I'm a little bit tempted to go human. I'm not sure. But if I was alliance on my warrior, I would go human warrior. So do I want two humans, right? So for that reason, probably do human warrior, gnome warlock, and then dwarf priest, definitely. Just like I told you, I was like idolizing the female dwarf priest in her tier like back in the day, and I want to be that person. But then for horde, I'm thinking troll warrior, orc warlock, and I don't even know if I would go priest. I would probably go shaman or something, because I don't want to be an undead, and I feel like if I went priest on horde, I would have to be an undead priest. I guess I could just roll like I don't want to be a troll priest. That's just the thing. Like, I'm gonna be a troll warrior. So maybe I'll do, like, I don't know, a shaman or a hunter or something as my third class if I'm on horde, and I won't do the priest at all because I just don't want to be an undead that bad.
Yeah, they're solid choices.
Alright, well, I guess that wraps up the stream. Thank you everyone who came out and for the follows and for the subs that we got today. I wasn't expecting that because this is the first time we've really done any classic content on our channel at all. Usually we're a lore channel, lore and speculation. We plan to do more classic stuff for sure, and when classic does come out, we're gonna be like all in. Like, I'm gonna be streaming as I level. I'm gonna be like obsessed. I'm gonna play classic more than BFA for sure. Like, I'm not even gonna look at BFA when classic comes out. But I don't know. I think we're planning to do a discussion about the patch progression at some point. That was something we were interested in doing because Lhok and I at least are very passionate, I would say, about the changes, let's say, or the no changes of Classic, and how exactly Blizzard is going to decide what parts of what patches and how exactly they're going to make this like Franken patch of a game or whatever they're doing. We definitely have a lot to say on that, being like not private server players, and TLDR not wanting a nostalgious like game. We want like a vanilla WoW like game.
I want my 15 mans back. I miss that. I miss that so bad.
But
15 man UBRS, 15 man, and 10 man. Sorry, Skullmans and Strat. I miss them. I miss them so much. They were so much fun.
I'd really like to have a real progression where we can actually see a lot of variety in the content and not just have the stale private server standard that everyone has done a million times. That's how I feel. But we'll talk about that in depth probably in the future. So if you liked the video, you know, give us some feedback. If there's anything else you want to hear from us about Classic, if you have any questions about our Classic experience. Vaski couldn't be here today, but she also played back in legit Classic. She also raided. All three of us raided in Classic. So yeah, I guess that will be all. So we will see you guys next time. We have a stream on June 13th. So check that out too. Bye.
See ya.